So, also, I don't trust this. Oh, they're bad, so they must have done something wrong and they deserve what they had coming rationale, which is the same one we hear from the CIA as we hear from police in a case like Michael Brown. And right now, thousands of Americans are marching in New York and Washington and across the country, demanding a justice system that applies the same to everybody and honors our values. And we want you to know that our hearts are out there marching with them. Please tweet us your comments. Poppy Harlow is up next.
I got to tell you, until I read Joe Concha, his piece at Mediaite, which is where I got that soundbite from, the video from as well, I had no idea there was this show on CNN on Saturday afternoons. And my stomach was pretty calm and my blood pressure was pretty normal until I saw this piece, and then I just went crazy. Joining us now is Joe Concha, columnist with Mediaite.com. Hey, Joe.
Stevie, how are you?
You know what? Are they trying to out MSNBC with this? First of all, this Sally Cohn, who's as radical a leftist as there is on TV, Sonny Hostin, who's as, in my opinion, ignorant / radical leftist as there is on TV, and Margaret Hoover, who's a rhino, and Mel Robbins, who's a real left-of-center lawyer, and they all got their hands up as if there's any factual evidence that Michael Brown did that.
It's amazing that, A, the show doesn't have a title, which I found interesting.
I'll give you a few titles.
I'm sure you could, but again, this is a G-rated program.
Right.
So, but that's the whole thing. This show pops on at 3:30 p.m. on Saturday afternoons, and that's, if you go onto your TV guide, for instance, whether you have Fios, Cablevision, whatever, it'll tell you the name of the show. So I look, and it's CNN Newsroom, it's called. Now, CNN Newsroom is a straight news show. In other words, they tell you what's going on. They don't really inject any opinion. It's an old school kind of CNN that we're used to seeing, and that's basically what they run during the afternoon there. But for whatever reason, at 3:30, it suddenly goes from CNN Newsroom to the four folks that you just mentioned, and is kind of a version of The View meets Fox's The Five, which is kind of like MSNBC's The Cycle, and it's an opinion show, and it's panelists. So I don't begrudge anybody from giving an opinion. That's what you do all day. That's what I do as a pundit. That's not a problem. But the opinion needs to be, as you mentioned, factually correct. And I think the danger that we're seeing now amongst the media, not just this show, but amongst the media, is marrying the Garner case to the Brown case as if they're two of the same exact kinds of incidents, when they are completely apples and oranges, because you had him, as you know, in one case, Mr. Brown, according to the evidence that we've all seen now, he did punch Officer Wilson. He did go for his gun. You go for a cop's gun, a good chance you're going to get shot. So the whole hands up, don't shoot narrative has been dismissed in a court of law. Now, Garner's a different situation. A lot of folks are saying, well, that was a different case, and certainly we can't really say that Garner is anything like Brown, but now we're, by this show doing hands up, don't shoot, the protests on Saturday, I would argue, were about Eric Garner more than they were about Michael Brown, just based on the timing. And yet now they're saying, oh, no, this is a problem with police, killing black men, and it simply is not the case, and it's irresponsible, I thought, to do hands up, don't shoot as it applies to Eric Garner, because that had nothing to do with anything with that case, but yet this is what we saw on this, again, Untitled program.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm sorry, Joe, I was just going to say, you're absolutely right, and this was an example, though, of what, on these shows that are not CNN Newsroom, when they have, whether it's Erin Burnett, who, again, in my view, and don't forget, she once called George W. Bush that little monkey, when she was on CNBC and doing a guest shot on MSNBC with Morning Joe. She referred to him. He was walking with the French president, and she said that little monkey. Anyway, it's just these people are on as panelists all the time. These four, and especially the ones, the other three, without Margaret Hoover, when it comes to these cases, these police cases, and they spew that. This nonsense that you'll tell them, well, there was disproven in the grand jury. They'll tell you the grand jury was unfair. They'll tell you never should have gone to a grand jury. They got an answer for everything, but it all flies in the face of the law and how we have to run our society.
Right. You mentioned Margaret before, and I was just getting up the tweet. She said, this is not left versus right. This is about equal justice under the law. And whoa. I believe there was a grand jury, and I believe that Officer Wilson, and I think a lot of folks feel this way, it's obviously a very hot issue and it's polarizing, but to say that Brown is like Garner is just completely ridiculous. And just to get back for a second, for people who have been asking me a lot on Twitter, how could you put a show on the air without a title? The theory that I've come up with, and we reached out to CNN for comment, we haven't heard back, is that if you cancel the show doesn't go well, then there's no embarrassment of sending out a press release because technically it didn't exist in the first place.
Yeah, maybe they could do what Katie Couric did. She could sit at the front of the desk with her legs showing when she hosted the CBS Evening News for a cup of coffee and say, I don't know what to call this show. Could you send in some suggestions? Remember that beauty?
That's right. And now she's the, I believe, the intergalactic reporter for some big title like world reporter. But CNN's had trouble in this regard, if we get back to the media angle for a second, in terms of creating panel shows. We all know about Fox's The Five and how well that does. It's a top 3 show. It was supposed to be a summer film, right, when Greg Beck parted ways.
No, they've been having lots of problems in lots of areas. Joe, always great to talk to you. Merry Christmas. Joe Concha, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up next, the creator of Real World View will be here. But first, on February 20th, 1962, John Glenn became the first man to orbit the Earth, as well as a symbol of American ambition. Let's take a look back now at that historical feat with this hour's American Moment.
He had served in 2 wars and flown over 150 combat missions. But in just 60 seconds, this Marine Corps officer would experience a ride like no other. At 9:47 a.m. on the 20th of February, 1962, Lieutenant Colonel John Glenn, Jr. of New Concord, Ohio, found himself sitting on top of an Atlas 6 rocket filled with 600,000 pounds of fuel. At liftoff, 360,000 pounds of thrust hurled the massive rocket and its occupant into space and America's history books. John Glenn became the 4th human being to enter space and the first American to orbit the Earth. For his remarkable heroism, President Kennedy awarded Colonel Glenn NASA's Distinguished Service Medal.
As our knowledge of this universe in which we live increases, may God grant us the wisdom and guidance to use it wisely. Thank you, Colonel.
Glenn went on to become the United States Senator from Ohio, and in 1984 ran for the Democratic presidential nomination, but lost to Walter Mondale. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax TV.